The Power Hour with John Lee.
Welcome back, Power Hour people. Welcome to the Power Hour. Today, I've got a lot of things to talk about. Well, one thing really, and a lot of people. I was asked a very difficult question on the Power Hour a few weeks ago by my friend and colleague and all kinds of things, Pedro Laguna, great guy. And we were talking about, Woody Allen. Anyway, we were talking about Woody Allen, and there's a statue of Woody Allen in the city where I live, which is Oviedo in the north of Spain. And so people like Woody Allen. I'm not really in that position. And we were discussing Woody Allen a little bit, particularly regarding his personal life and all the speculation around it. And he asked the question, can we separate the artist from the art? And he gave me the example of Michael Jackson and said that he likes Michael Jackson's music, but he's quite sure that Michael Jackson was a paedophile. So I was thinking about this, and it's just such a good question that I can't answer it. So I thought I'll roll out some examples and see what the Power Hour people think, see what kind of conclusions we can get. Like, share, subscribe. Do it for me, do it for you. And leave some comments. I want to get some feedback on this because I really don't know. We'll start with Woody Allen. What's the problem with Woody Allen? Right, well, as I say, a lot of it's speculation, a lot of it's accusation, but he's got a very poor reputation in general regarding young girls. Why? Because he married the adopted daughter of his wife. He says that he personally never adopted her. It was only his wife that adopted her. There's a lot of argument about the circumstances around that, whether or not they were ever really considered as family members, etc. How old she was when the sexual relationship started and all that. Now, for me, if a guy goes into the bar and says, well, my wife adopted this young Asian girl, and then I started having sex with her, and then we left and got our own place, and we lived together, and then we got married, and now we're together, and there's a good 40-year age gap. I don't think that would make him very popular in the pub. Certainly not where I come from. It's certainly not. It's not what you do. We'll put it like that. And the age gap, I don't care. If it's two adults, consenting adults, and happy together, great. But those circumstances don't appeal to me, really. And more serious than that is his biological daughter, who in the early 90s accused him of sexually assaulting her on numerous occasions when she was very young, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. And she maintains that to this day. That's nearly, obviously it's nearly 30 years ago. And she still maintains that to this day, as does his son, who we'll talk a little bit more about later. So his biological son, apparently his biological son anyway, maintains that his behaviour was entirely unacceptable and inappropriate when they were kids, particularly regarding his sister. So and he's been under this cloud for a long time, and he didn't help his case in recent years when he was pictured walking down the street with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we all know Jeffrey Epstein is, certainly to my knowledge, the biggest people trafficker, sex trafficker, and paedophile in the world. Certainly the most famous. And if you've got 30 years of a cloud hanging over your head of speculation and accusation of some of the worst kinds of crimes that a man can ever commit, or any person for that matter, why are you walking down the street with Jeffrey Epstein? He's a finance guy. Well, how do you even know Jeffrey Epstein? What are you doing walking down the street with him? And the cat was out of the bag by this time. Everyone knew Jeffrey Epstein was a paedophile. Everybody knew that Woody Allen had some serious problems with his reputation. So for those two guys to go walking down the street together and get caught on camera, And if you look at the photo of that, we've shown it on the Power Hour before, it appears to me that Woody does not really want to be filmed. So that's the negative side of Woody Allen. I started with that because that's the reason that I'm doing the programme in this format today. What's the good side of him? Well, according to millions of people around the world, his films are absolutely brilliant. In England, we say that somebody is like Marmite. If you either love them or you hate them. Marmite is a sandwich spread, if you don't know. And you either love it or you hate it. I hate Woody Allen films, you know. In fact, if a Woody Allen film just comes on the television and I can't find the remote to turn it off, I nearly have a panic attack, you know, because I know it's going to really bore me in a clinical way. It's terrible. It's just this skinny little man talking incessantly to these beautiful women that are always much taller than him. And I just find that boring. But I'm sure that's just the worst summary of Woody Allen films you've ever heard in your life. Millions of people love him. They think he's a genius. Literally use the word all the time. Woody Allen's a genius. And he's world famous and he's made lots of films. So, yeah, definitely. Just because I don't like his films, that's just not my taste. He's definitely a talented man. Definitely a very intelligent man. And even if you conclude that Woody Allen is a paedophile, if that's what you conclude, or just a dirty old man maybe, does that in any way detract from your enjoyment of Woody Allen films if you are a Woody Allen fan? Or can we separate the two things? It's called, in cinema, the suspension of disbelief. So Mel Gibson, who we'll look at later, for example, is on a horse in a field. And you know that's not William Wallace. You know this is not happening hundreds of years ago. You know that's Mel Gibson on a horse, right? But you allow yourself to forget that. And you allow yourself to stop seeing Mel Gibson and start seeing William Wallace. And you know nobody's going to chop Mel Gibson's head off during the battle, but you still allow yourself to get nervous about it because it's William Wallace. So that's the suspension of disbelief. And does that carry even further to the point where we can ignore what we know about the actors or the directors or people involved in the project, even when what we know is horrible? So we moved to Michael Jackson. This was the example that Pedro gave me. What about Michael Jackson? Now, again, there's a lot of contention about this. A lot of people say that he's innocent. Macaulay Culkin says he never did anything wrong. Many people said he was guilty. They filed charges against him, and Michael Jackson settled out of court many times, so he paid people to go away. There's an argument there. Did he pay them because he was guilty, or did he pay them because he didn't want the scandal, or because, you know, for other reasons that they were after his money? There's a lot of arguments online, especially about Michael Jackson. I simply don't know if he's guilty of paedophilia. But I did see him in an interview, and he was talking about sleeping with kids, and he had a kid with him. I think he was a 12-year-old boy, and he was talking about sleeping with this kid, sharing his bed with this kid and other kids as well. Now, again, where I come from, that does not fly. I'm from Manchester in England, and in Manchester we're, you know, generally honest, hard-working people. That's the culture anyway. But if we discover that there's a 45-year-old man sleeping or sharing his bed with other people's kids, that's not going to be nice. There won't be a good outcome there. And we're not interested in your explanations about how you didn't have a childhood and how you don't understand adult relationships, and it's all about the love and the sharing of the bed. And my question on this is, if Michael Jackson really didn't know that it's inappropriate to share your bed with kids as a grown-up, as an adult man, why did he never write a song about it? If he thinks it's so normal. He wrote songs about everything else. You know, I'm not even going to make some jokes about this, which I could, but you never hear him singing about sleeping with kids, and it's never mentioned in any of his songs, and you never see it in a video. You never see a Michael Jackson video where he's in bed with 4 or 5 kids, and he just thinks it's perfectly normal and doesn't understand the controversy, because he knows full well people are not going to like that. People are not going to sing that song, and they're not going to watch the video, and they're going to say, "What are you doing, you freak?" Like when his baby over the balcony, he knows he would get, or he knew he would get a very negative reaction to that, and so he never did it. And therefore, the argument that he doesn't understand the difference between adult to adult relationships versus adult to child relationships, it just doesn't hold water with me. I don't believe that. I think you would see that in his lyrics and in his music videos if that was the case. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trust Michael Jackson. I wouldn't leave him near kids, my kids or anyone else's kids. But as Pedro said, when Beat It comes on or Thriller comes on, the man was a musical genius. Even though he wasn't really a musician, he wrote it all in his head. And he'd go in and he'd just like sing the music to people in a way that I won't try and replicate, because, as I say, he was a musical genius, and he'd do all the choreography, and his shows were amazing. So for me, it would be sad to lose the ability to love that music and love those concerts and that talent. The man's talent was incredible. And to lose it because he himself in his personal life was not correct. However, I'm sure there are millions of people around the world who have very good reason to boycott Michael Jackson completely and say, like, I don't care, how good his moonwalk is, or, how catchy the music or the tune is. I'm boycotting Michael Jackson because I know what he was. So yeah, again, I'm not going to come down with a "so I've decided" on this and say, right, there's a right and a wrong, a good and a bad. I don't know. It's a really tricky question. So I'm looking at individual cases, and those were the 2 that were mentioned to me. So we'll stay in music. A few more icons. I'm going with icons here. I mean, I could do about 300, 400 famous people who've had some kind of controversy in their life. But we'll look at Chuck Berry. Right, Johnny Be Good. He's widely regarded as the father of rock and roll. He came up with Little Richard and Fats Domino and people like that before Elvis Presley. And basically, most people, most musicians took something or a lot from Chuck Berry. He was a great songwriter, obviously a great guitarist, very talented man. But the dark side, again, is sexual with Chuck. He did a lot of bad things in his life, but he was actually sent to prison in 1959 because he was driving across state lines, which makes it a federal crime, with a 13-year-old girl. I think she was 13. She may have been 14. She was a minor, and he was taking her across state lines for immoral purposes, I think it was stated, basically for sex. That's people trafficking, and it's paedophilia. And he was caught doing that, and that's a fact. Chuck Berry was a paedophile. He was a sex offender, and he was actually willing to drive into a different state in order to continue with his disgusting activities. And 30 years later, in 1989, he had a restaurant, and he set up a camera in the women's toilets, right? And he was recording the women going to the toilet, and he had numerous tapes in his house, cassettes, video cassettes of women going to the toilet, and he was also sexually inappropriate, to say the least, with his female employees. I mean, that's low. That is low. Secretly recording women as they go to the toilet and then bringing the videos back to your house for your own entertainment. that's low. That's really low. So Chuck made some great music. He really did. I particularly love Teenage Wedding. That's in Pulp Fiction. So can I sacrifice Chuck Berry music because I really have a strong distaste for the man? Yes. But is it a sacrifice? Not really, because I don't generally listen to Chuck Berry music anyway. So that doesn't count. It doesn't count if you're going to boycott someone that you never listen to. But we have to look at the reality of who these people are that are entertaining us, I think. So that was Chuck Berry, a legend, of course, in rock and roll music. And then fly a little bit forward to John Lennon. Absolutely adored, idolised worldwide. A man of peace, a man of progress, a man of love. And he was obviously the founding, one of the founding members, probably the main member of the Beatles, which is surely the most famous band of all time. Not the best band, in my opinion, by a million miles, but they were in the right place at the right time. They made some good music and they became extremely famous. And then John Lennon had a very successful solo career. Millions of people love his music. I'm not one of them. I personally am not a Beatles fan. I'm not anti-Beatles. If I'm in your house and you put it on, you put it on. But I'm not a fan of the Beatles and I'm not a fan of John Lennon. Now, what's the problem with John Lennon? Well, frankly, the problem with John Lennon is that he was an absolute fake. Total fake. He was an extremely violent man. Okay, he came from post-war Liverpool. Very poor, very hard, very tough. And he could fight, and he liked to fight. All right. Many people, many young men especially, go through that. And then they grow up and they get tired of it. But he turned his attention to punching women. And he was married twice, and I forget the name of the first wife, but he used to beat her brutally. She was the mother of his son, Julian, and he beat her brutally. And at the same time, he was having an affair with Yoko Ono. And she knew he was married, obviously. I don't know if she knew about the beatings, but she certainly knew that John Lennon was married and that he had a baby, Julian. But she continued that illicit affair with John Lennon. And then John Lennon took a load of drugs one night and told his wife about Yoko Ono, got kicked out, and now he's living with Yoko Ono. And they set themselves up as some kind of moral compass for the world. Well, really? You're a wife beater, and this is your new girlfriend who has affairs behind other women's backs. I'm not really sure that I'm accepting you guys as a moral compass. And then he started beating Yoko Ono. And he was vicious with her. He was brutal. To the point where the people closest to Yoko Ono say that she had a miscarriage. She lost a baby because of one of the beatings that John Lennon gave to her. Which is terribly sad. That's a terrible, terrible thing. But, I mean, the fact that he was violent is not in question. He admitted it himself. He admitted to beating women. He said, I'm an extremely violent man. And it's always the violent men that talk most about peace. John Lennon said that. And he was also a fake hippie, which got him killed. Because, and I'm not condoning this in any way, but he used to have these love-ins. You know, he's in bed with Yoko, and it's all flowers and duvets, and, you know, we want peace, and this is where we're staying until we get it. But then when the cameras were off, he was up, he was out of that bed, he was getting dressed, and he was going out at night around New York in a limousine, chauffeur-driven limousine. What kind of hippie goes around New York in a chauffeur-driven limousine? And so Mark Chapman, the guy who killed him, he went to New York to find John Lennon because he was his idol. He was his own personal hero. And when he got to the Dakota building where John Lennon lived, which is palatial, And he saw John Lennon walking out of the Dakota building and getting into his limousine and all that. And he was devastated, he says. This is Mark Chapman said this. Because Mark Chapman, you have to understand, like many of these assassins from the 20th century, was obsessed with a book called Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which is all about a boy called Holden Caulfield who grows up to discover that adults are fake, and that growing up and becoming an adult means learning how to be a fake. And so when he was confronted with the reality of John Lennon as he saw it, he made the decision to wait for him to come back. And when he did come back, and when he arrived, Mark Chapman pulled a gun out and shot him, I think 5 times. I'm in no way condoning that. Mark Chapman was mentally ill. And he killed a man. That's horrible. But to me, it just always antagonises me. Taking that aside, always antagonises me when I hear John Lennon singing that "Imagine all the people." Well, imagine not beating your wife, John. You know, imagine that, and then do it. So yeah, I don't like fakes at the best of time, but not high, especially not high-profile multi-millionaire fakes. So yeah, I've got more feelings about John Lennon there. Domestic violence has always been a serious problem. Don't put it in a context. It's always been wrong. So we'll leave John Lennon for a moment. Leave him alone. I'm getting antagonised. We'll go to James Brown, Godfather of Soul. Again, immensely talented man. You only have to see Rocky IV and his big entrance. I live in America. You know, and he used to he was like the conductor of the orchestra who was on stage. And his dancing and his volume of music was just incredible. So the talent is not disputable. You can't say that James Brown was not talented. He's a godfather of soul, you know. But again, just a violent maniac. And he was a powerful man as well. When he was young, James Brown was a beast of a man. And he had 4 wives, and he used to beat them all viciously. And one of his daughters, I don't know how many kids James Brown's got, but one of his daughters wrote a book about her experiences growing up. And it's brutal. Honestly, it's hard. It's a difficult read, honestly. The brutality of the beatings that she witnessed from James Brown against her own mother. And she tried to stop him and she couldn't, you know. And he lived his whole life like that. And then he was arrested and jailed for 6 years, I think it was, 6 years and 6 months, on unrelated charges. He was just taking a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. He was threatening people with guns because people were using his bathroom. And then he was chased by the police. They chased him for 6 miles, shot his tyres out and all that. He was charged with all kinds of possession of this, possession of that, possession of the other. And, drugs and firearms. And he went to prison for that. And the very iconic pictures of James Brown when he was arrested. And there's some great interviews as well where he's clearly high. But what's incredible to me, I think, is that the last time he got arrested was in the late 90s. Again for domestic violence. When he was 73 years old, the police were called to his house when he was 73 years old, and he was beating his wife when they arrived. I mean, that's a mental problem. That must be a mental problem. You still... It's bad to do it at any period of your life, but if you're still doing it at 73, there's a serious issue there. And I know there are millions of people around the world who love James Brown's music, and rightly so. Absolutely brilliant. In my opinion, far superior to John Lennon as a musician. Purely my opinion. But can you watch him dancing about and going, hey, and not think, yeah, but you're a terrible wife beater? And does it not detract from your enjoyment of the show? I think it would in that case. I think I would be watching him and enjoying the show, but also thinking, I really, really don't like you or anything that you do apart from this music. Maybe close my eyes and listen to the music, but then you miss the show. So, I mean, I've gone at some big guns there in the music world. Chuck Berry, John Lennon, and James Brown. Not very nice guys, to say the least. Are there any of them that I would sacrifice? Woody Allen, Michael Jackson, any of these music guys? I think the strongest contender is Michael Jackson. You know, if I hear Billie Jean, I just love that song. You know, and knowing what I know or thinking what I think about Michael Jackson, you know, it's hard, but I still love his music. I still do. So I'm guilty maybe of something there. Now we're going to leave music a little bit because I don't want to just attack the music world. We're going to look at first some directors of great films, great iconic film directors. Now we all know, and we're going to see later, a bit of Ricky Gervais. There is a problem in Hollywood. There is a problem in the music industry as well. Abuse, harassment, usury, and a kind of cult mentality where they all protect each other, but not for the right reasons. They do it because it might be beneficial to them financially or just in their career. And that is low. That is very low, especially when we look at some of the examples I'm going to give you. Roman Polanski. Maybe if you're not particularly a film lover, you might not know who Roman Polanski is, but he was a great director, truly great film director. He directed, well, amongst others, Rosemary's Baby, which I'll have to come back to later if I get time. It's a great film about Satanism in the extreme, human sacrifice level, Satan worship. And it's a scary film. It's not a horror. It's not a gory, blood everywhere type horror. It's psychologically terrifying. And he also made, I think it's The Piano, about the Holocaust, about the way that Jewish people were rounded up by the Nazis. I mean, to try and make a film about that is brave, and he did it really well. I've watched it once, and it's sensitive, it's compelling, it's powerful, and it leaves a mark on you. And it's beautifully directed. I mean, the man is tremendously talented. So why is that a problem? Well, that's not. What is a problem is that he is, for me, one of the lowest forms of human life. Yeah. And while I don't condone violence, I might just reflexively punch him in the face if I saw him. Because what he did was he gave drugs and alcohol to a 13-year-old girl. And then when she was incapacitated, he raped her. Now, she's not old enough to consent anyway, so it's rape. She literally can't say yes, therefore it's rape. But not content with that, he gave her drugs and alcohol to make it easier for himself. What a disgusting little bastard. You know, and then he was found guilty, but he left the country and has never faced the consequences. And I'm supposed to believe that's the only time he's ever done anything like that. Well, I don't. And what really, really infuriates me is the way that these Hollywood people celebrate him. You know, I mean, Whoopi Goldberg, right, who's always going on The View in America, telling everybody what's right and wrong. She literally said in a conversation on The View, on television, about what Roman Polanski did, she literally said, Well, it wasn't rape. What's rape, Whoopi? He raped a 13-year-old girl using drugs and alcohol, and you think that because you made 4 or 5 absolutely shit films in which you're Whoopi Goldberg, just in every one exactly the same, and people got tired of looking at you, you think that if you say something nice or defend Roman Polanski, then either Roman or one of his mates might call you up and say, hey, Whoopi, you know that thing you've done in every film you've ever been in? Well, can you come and do it for us, please? Because, you know, people want to see that again. And just on the possibility that that might happen, you're going to defend a man like Roman Polanski. You know, get off the planet, Whoopi. That's disgusting. And when you see them all standing up and celebrating him, all right, he's made good films, but you don't have to go that far to celebrate the man. I'm going to leave him before I blow my top. Get too angry with Roman Polanski. Yeah, I boycott Roman Polanski, definitely. I'm not watching The Piano, and I'm not watching Rosemary's Baby either. That's too bad for me. Mel Gibson, change of pace. Violent, aggressive, rapist, paedophile, no. As far as I know, he's none of those things. But he is an odious person with his views and his opinions. And I really do think that everyone's got the right to their own views and opinions, but there are views and opinions that I don't accept. And he manifests all of them. He has a long history of being extremely homophobic, openly racist. Is there anything he's not? He's also anti-Semitic in the extreme. I mean, this became anti-Semitic. I think it's anti-Semitic. This became clear when he pulled over by the police for drink driving, and he wound his window down and gave them an anti-Semitic rant about how the Jews caused all the problems in the world. I mean, you what? And Winona Ryder, who I didn't know but is apparently Jewish, she maintains, and this is foul, she maintains that Mel Gibson used to call her an oven dodger because the Jewish people were put into ovens during the Holocaust. And because she's Jewish, she's an oven dodger. I mean, the fact that that expression exists is repugnant, but that you would say it to a person, you should be blacklisted from absolutely everything. I think that's unforgivable. Even if you say, oh, well, it was a joke. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not acceptable. So Mel Gibson's a horrible little man. As talented as he is, he's a great actor, great director. He's done some really good work. But I'm sorry, you can't be hating everybody that's different from you. Would I not watch Braveheart because he's in it? No. I wouldn't deliberately put it on, but if someone else put it on, I wouldn't insist that they turn it off because Mel Gibson's in it. But it would be on my mind while I'm watching the film that, you know, he's a horrible person. Mel Gibson is a horrible person. Moving now, because I've got a lot of people here to talk about. To Harvey Weinstein. Most people know who Harvey Weinstein is. Again, horrible individual. Spent decades abusing young girls, women. Using his power. He was very powerful in Hollywood. If you don't know who he was the owner of Miramax. Very powerful guy in Hollywood. And he used that position to abuse young women and girls for years and years and years. And they all knew. They all knew. Right? All these Hollywood people, they all knew. And the politicians knew what he was doing. You know. Some people have come out and said, yeah, look, I'm sorry, I knew. Jane Fonda, you know. I didn't do anything to stop him. Okay, so you enabled him. Right. Now, why is that a problem? I should just hate Harvey Weinstein and forget about it. Well, yeah, I do to a large extent, but he was very good at what he did. Oh, that doesn't compensate, does it, at all? But if you look at some of the Miramax films, he did make films that no one else would make. And as the producer, it was his responsibility not only to get the money together and put it on the table, but to make sure the project happens. And he did it when no one else would. And I've got some examples for you. Pulp Fiction. Obviously, a massive cinematic moment when Pulp Fiction came out. Really introduced Quentin Tarantino to the world. He'd already made Reservoir Dogs, but Pulp Fiction was the one. And he reinvented the way that stories are told on the silver screen, you know. And there were moments in that. I mean, you know, there are men getting raped by other men for fun, and then they're being killed for doing it. When the tables turn, they get brutally killed for doing that, but they get tortured first. There are really graphic scenes of overdose, murder. And he also insisted on putting John Travolta in it. And John Travolta was absolutely brilliant in that. But Harvey Weinstein made the film that no one else would make, and that was Pulp Fiction. So, I mean, I love that film. You've got then My Left Foot, not one of my favourite films, but a very brave film. It's a film about a guy in a wheelchair, Christy Brown, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. And, you know, you go around trying to sell that idea. Well, it's a film about a guy in a wheelchair, you see. Stop. You know, forget it. We don't do those kinds of films. Harvey Weinstein did. He financed the project and he made the film, and it's a classic. It's a great film. Very brave. The Crying Game. What's that about? That's about a guy who falls in love with a woman, very beautiful woman, only to discover that it's not a woman, in the sense that she has a penis, which she reveals to him suddenly. And that's again, even for the viewer, a tremendously shocking moment in cinema, and pure classic moment in cinema, in The Crying Game. It's synonymous with shock, that moment. And he made the film. He was the guy who made the film about the man who falls in love with a woman who's secretly a man. He also made City of God, the Brazilian film set in the favelas and made in the favelas of Brazil, about drug dealers and gangsters in I think it was Rio. But anyway, it's made entirely in Portuguese. Of course, the Brazilians speak Portuguese, but this is a kind of ghetto Portuguese that even the Portuguese have difficulty understanding. And he made it entirely in the native language, and it's a great film. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, watch it. I'm surprised it hasn't been copied, but it is a very good film, and not many people in Hollywood would make a fully foreign language film like that, and he did. And then, of course, Trainspotting. And what's that about? That's about a group of Scottish junkies. Who the hell wants to watch a film about a group of Scottish junkies? Well, guess what? It's an absolutely brilliant film. But again, there are scenes in that are hard to watch and impossible to forget. It's graphic. It's very graphic. And Harvey Weinstein was there again to make it happen. So these films wouldn't exist. Probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harvey Weinstein, and wouldn't have been made with the kind of production quality that they were given if it wasn't for Harvey Weinstein. And I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. Again, repugnant human, absolutely terrible example of a human, but responsible for some absolutely wonderful films that millions of people have enjoyed. Would I not watch Pulp Fiction and Trainspotting ever again because of Harvey Weinstein? No. My view is that I won't give that kind of power to Harvey Weinstein. You know, I'll watch the film anyway, as repulsive as that man is. So I've got a couple of lighter ones. We'll throw them in together. Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Grant. Because they're not terrible people, really. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., he just got involved with drugs. He always had a problem with drugs, even as a young man. And he did a lot of stupid things. Drink driving is one of them. That's bad. You can kill families doing that. So that's a serious thing. But his intention was never to hurt anybody else. He was just stupid and irresponsible. And he took a lot of drugs and did himself a lot of harm, and he went to prison for it. But he was punished, and he came back and has had a tremendously successful career since then. So I applaud the man. And I would have absolutely no problem watching a film with Robert Downey Jr. in it. Same with Hugh Grant. I mean, Hugh Grant got paid to be Hugh Grant for about 20 years. He was just going around in all his films being very posh and a bit confused, you know, and that was it with Hugh Grant. Thanks, Hugh. See you later. And then you can just do the same thing again in the next film. But he went down and got himself a prostitute from some really rough area. And the thing that antagonised me about it was that they were both engaged in a consensual act between adults, right? And she was poor and he was rich. He was fined $1,000, about £700, which he could easily spend on a bottle of wine. And she got 6 months in prison. Why does he get a little fine that he can pay easily and she goes to prison for 6 months? Surely she's got enough problems as it is. But the tide turned on that because she monetised it. She made a lot of money from book deals, etc., about her experience with Hugh Grant, and made millions actually, and maybe ended up with more money than Hugh Grant. I don't know if that's a fact, but I would like to think that is true, because that's a terrible miscarriage of justice. We're going to jump forward a little bit to Kevin Spacey, because I want to show you a video. Kevin Spacey attacked and raped a 14-year-old boy. Kevin Spacey has been accused formally by 30 different men who were young normally at the time of being assaulted or attacked by Kevin Spacey. And when it came out, one of the worst parts is when it came out that he'd assaulted this 14-year-old kid, he said he used it as an opportunity to come out of the closet and say he was gay. This was his response. Well, you know, I'm gay. What the hell has being gay got to do with being a paedophile? What you're saying, Kevin, that there's some kind of connection between paedophilia and homosexuality? Is that what you're saying? You're throwing the entire gay community under the bus because you've been caught doing what you do. That was disgusting. And of course it was treated like that by every right-minded person, and his career completely imploded. And we don't see him anymore, but he was talented. If you watch Seven, he's absolutely brilliant in Seven. And he's even better in The Usual Suspects, which was one of my favourite films. So I don't know, I'll do an experiment. I'll watch The Usual Suspects again and see if my detest, or the way I detest Kevin Spacey affects my enjoyment of the film. And I'll let you know. Johnny, hit me with the video, please. I want to see Ricky Gervais.
Hello and welcome to the 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards, live from the Beverly Hilton Hotel here in Los Angeles. I'm Ricky Gervais, thank you. You'll be pleased to know this is the last time I'm hosting these awards, so I don't care anymore. I'm joking, I never did. Let's go out with a bang. Let's have a laugh at your expense, shall we? Remember, they're just jokes. We're all gonna die soon, and there's no sequel. I came here in a limo tonight, and the license plate was made by Felicity Huffman. So, no, shush. It's her daughter I feel sorry for, okay? That must be the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to her. And her dad was in Wild Hogs. No one cares about movies anymore. No one goes to the cinema. No one really watches network TV. Everyone's watching Netflix. This show should just be me coming out going, well done, Netflix, you win everything. Good night. You could binge watch the entire first season of Afterlife instead of watching this show. Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself. Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care. It was a big year for paedophile movies. Surviving R. Kelly, Leaving Neverland, Two Popes. Shut up. Shut up. I don't care. I don't care. The Irishman was amazing. Long, but amazing. It wasn't the only epic movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, nearly 3 hours long. Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him. So... Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist. So, we were going to do an in memoriam this year, but when I saw the list of people that had died, it wasn't diverse enough. It just, no. Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, yeah. A superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent. If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and... So... It's already 3 hours long.
Okay. You seen Ricky there. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Doing what needs to be done. Get these people told, you know. When Roman Polanski, for example, as I mentioned earlier, when he was given the Best Director award, he couldn't go and get the award because he's a fugitive, because he's a paedophile. And all your favourite Hollywood stars, they all stood up and gave him, standing ovation. Now, if the presenter came out and said, look, Roman Polanski is a dirty little bastard, but he's made a really good film, so we're going to give him the award based on that criteria, but we won't have any applause for the man. And if you want to do that, you can do it in the car park. I'd say, right, fair enough. But they're all there clapping and glad-handing each other, yeah, cheering on this terrible paedophile who's escaped justice. Absolutely not. Absolutely detest, again, these people. And my mate Ricky Gervais made it clear there why. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bill Cosby because of the hypocrisy of the man. Bill Cosby became famous back in the 60s, I think, maybe the 70s. I'm going to go with the early 70s, as a kind of family-friendly comedian. All his comedy was like about the family and kids and going to the park and what's funny about that. And he did well, he was successful, and he got some serious acting roles. And then in the 80s, he had a program, very successful program called The Cosby Show, one of the most successful comedies of all time. And he was Bill Huxtable. And they were a very affluent black American family, which was important at the time for lots of reasons. And he became known as America's dad. He was constantly referred to as America's dad, so much so that he actually went on tour, basically dressing down, if you want, criticising the youth of America, especially the black youth, and especially black women, and attacking single mothers and, you know, the immorality of it all. And he actually lost a lot of popularity doing that. But what really antagonises me and galls me about Bill Cosby is that all this, you know, America's Dad, Cosby Show, it was all a front. It was a carefully constructed mask, a lie, a facade. And he hid behind that for decades, because what he was doing was he was getting young, hopeful actresses to come to his place, wherever he was, thinking this was their big break. And he'd say, do you want a drink? And they, of course, said, yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Cosby. And he'd turn round and drop a pill of some description into their drink, and then give them the drink. And then when they were incapacitated, he would sexually assault them and attack them. And he did this on the regular. He had 60 women confirmed. I think they've all accused him and been taken very seriously. He's actually been sent to prison for 3 counts. That doesn't mean he's only guilty of 3 crimes. It means that it's a long process to give him 60 trials, extremely expensive as well. But to create a false version of yourself and sell that on a worldwide level as a cover for who you really are, and knowingly do it so that you can attack young girls like that for decades, that's despicable. Again, though, there's no sacrifice. Oh, terrible news. I can't watch The Cosby Show. No, I just don't watch The Cosby Show anyway. So the fact that Bill Cosby's a bad man doesn't really cost me anything. I can focus purely on how much I dislike him, and how glad I am that he was caught eventually and sent to prison. So a lot of these guys, I know there's a kind of negative tone about this, but there's so much talent. If you go through the names of the people I've talked about today, these are some of the most talented people in various areas of entertainment that we've seen over the last, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years in the various areas of music and cinema. And we have to accept that many of them are terrible people, and that they are protected by this cult, or this microculture, this hive, where even if they're not directly guilty, I consider them implicated, because they facilitate the crimes of these people who are allowed to continue doing what they're doing. And I'm just going to throw a few links at you just to illustrate that. Starting with Seth MacFarlane. Who's that? Seth MacFarlane is the creator, the voice artist, and he basically is Family Guy. The American comedy series has been running for years and years. And Seth MacFarlane seems to be in the loop. He seems to know what's going on, because a few years before Harvey Weinstein was exposed, he was given an award for the Best Actress, and he had 5 nominees. And he said, congratulations to these 5 women who no longer have to pretend that they are attracted to Harvey Weinstein. And everyone in the room laughed. Everyone got the joke. They all knew what he meant. This was long before the scandal. They all knew exactly what Seth MacFarlane was talking about. Harvey Weinstein is a sex pest of the worst order, right? And we all know it, and we're all having a little laugh about it with our cocktails. Despicable again. And also, in an episode of Family Guy, the baby, Stewie, he comes running through the shopping centre screaming, help, help, I've just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement. Now, why Kevin Spacey? You could say it's only a joke. Yeah, but why did he choose Kevin Spacey? He knew. Everyone knew what Kevin Spacey was up to. And again, he was protected. Nobody said anything. Let him continue making that House of Cards propaganda. And it was only, later when it came out that people started to condemn him. But they knew for years and years what he was doing. So Seth MacFarlane knew what Kevin Spacey was. He knew what Harvey Weinstein was. And he was quite public with his jokes about it. From Seth, I'm going to jump to a woman called Mia Farrow. Now, this is interesting, and it is because I said it is. Mia Farrow is, she was an actress. But she's significant here because she was the star of Rosemary's Baby, the horror film that I mentioned earlier. She played Rosemary. And that was directed, as I said, by Roman Polanski. So Mia Farrow spent many, many days working very closely with Roman Polanski, who, as we know, was a terrible paedophile, horrible man. And Mia Farrow married Woody Allen. Interesting choice. Who was obviously then embroiled in many scandals, as we discussed earlier, involving children. And curiously enough, I think very curiously, they had a son called Ronan Farrow. Mia Farrow and Woody Allen had a son called Ronan Farrow, who many people actually believe to be the son of Frank Sinatra, who was Mia Farrow's boyfriend, who she never stopped seeing. By her own admission, after she married Woody Allen, she continued to see Frank Sinatra, and Ronan Farrow was born and looks very much like Frank Sinatra. And he grew up to be an extraordinarily intelligent young man and a journalist. And he was the guy who exposed Harvey Weinstein. Right? He was the one who broke the Harvey Weinstein case wide open. So it's curious to me that Mia Farrow, who was closely connected with Roman Polanski and Woody Allen, gave birth to Ronan Farrow, who went back to Hollywood a few decades later and blew it apart with his expose of Harvey Weinstein and all the complicity in that. And I think I'll leave you with this final little point. Do with it whatever you want. Roman Polanski made the film Rosemary's Baby, and that's about devil worshipping and satanic churches and human sacrifices and all that. And it's terrifying. And it's called Rosemary's Baby, so the idea of a baby is central to the film. And Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, was murdered in Roman Polanski's house. So he made that film, and then one night he went out, and the Manson family, of Charles Manson fame, the Manson family went to his house while he was out and murdered his wife, his pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, in a ritualistic satanic murder. So you make a film about a ritualistic satanic murder involving a woman and a baby, and then your wife and her baby get murdered in a ritualistic satanic murder while you're out of the house. I'm not suggesting he had anything to do with it. I'm just saying that is a crazy, crazy coincidence. That those two things should happen in connection with the same person. And the connections that I draw are really just to show that this is actually a club. It's a society. That's why Whoopi Goldberg won't criticise them. That's why these people stand up and applaud the Roman Polanskis of the world and the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, because it's a club that protects itself. You know, I don't care who you are. Can you help me? If you can, then I'll protect you. And it's incestuous, it's disgusting, and it needs to be stopped. But does that mean we can't enjoy the work that they've done? I don't know. I'll leave that down to the Power Hour people. You can let me know. I'll see you soon on the Power Hour. Stay powerful. Bobby Am.